After retreating from the Yellow Spring Pass region, the ghost nest continued its charge. The Yellow Spring Pass region had completely fallen. Ghost houses could move normally under daylight, but their numbers had already dwindled considerably. That massive batch of ghost nests, nearly all of them had perished. Half an hour later, the ghost nest was empty. Only scattered ghost houses remained, charging toward the defensive line. The first charge from the ghost clan came to an abrupt end, hastily concluded. Chen Fan's eyes were tinged with exhaustion. Standing atop the city wall, he gazed at the sea of blood beyond the line. He roughly guessed what had happened. The Ghost Emperor 95 had said that the great figure they had trapped was likely the commander of this ghost nest. Without the commander's orders and order, the ghost nest crumbled at the first touch. Before his death, 95 had left him a parting gift, but he let out a soft sigh. The kin traitor, the former King, he didn't know if the ghost clan wanted to kill him, but he desperately wanted to kill that so-called royal leader. That might not cause the royal clan to collapse, but it would force them into internal power struggles, buying him enough time to develop. For this reason, he stood openly in the city wall tonight, clinging to a faint hope of luring that leader hiding in the rear out for a conversation. But as the ghost nest's first wave struck, they held firm. Cheers erupted along the defensive line, deafening and thunders. The fear in people's eyes faded, replaced by a glimmer of hope. They began to fantasize about launching a counterattack, reclaiming the Eternal Night continent. Yet Chen Fan's eyes held little joy. He merely tightened his clothes, retreated into the nearby soldier's bunker, and prepared to get some sleep. Meanwhile, on a long-abandoned, fallen defensive line of the Eternal Night continent, a ghost house holding a scepter, wearing a crown, topped down from a towering ghost emperor's shoulder, stepped onto the ruins and looked around, a satisfied smile spreading across its face. This will be the third continent, conquered by our royal clan. It had already received word that the first assault on the Western Wasteland came to an abrupt end, had its commander killed by a blast from the breeding heavens dwelling before the battle even began, dooming the attack from the start. Good riddance, that waste died early. This small, boring ghost house wasn't particularly shaken by it. After all, that was just a probing force sent out. The real army was still gathering. But before that, come with me to the Yellow Spring Pass region. It looked around and laughed. It was very interested in that new continent. If it could obtain the exact coordinates of that new continent, the royal clan could conquer 4 continents. The main reason was that continent must lie beyond the Thunderstorm Sea. It was curious about how breeding had crossed the Thunderstorm Sea. At dusk, Chen Fan woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw 3 new boxes of building blueprints beside him. He quickly checked each blueprint, sorting them rapidly. Just then, the ground trembled faintly. On breeding's Yellow Spring Pass No. 1 defensive line, alarms suddenly blared. The ghost nest is here. Tia. Chen Fan stopped what he was doing, stood up, and looked up. The ghost nest approached, not charging, but advancing slowly, as if on a stroll. At the forefront, hundreds of massive ghost emperors, tens of meters tall, gathered together, strode toward the line with an intimidating presence. And like last night's chaotic charge, today's ghost nest was clearly better prepared. A subordinate strode in again from outside the hall, reporting, Sect Master, this batch of ghost nests suddenly stopped in unison thousands of meters from the line. A lazy voice came from within the ghost nest. You lowly creatures down there, summon Chen Fan. I am the royal clan's king of heaven. I wish to speak with him. As his words fell, standing on the line, Chen Fan's heart suddenly began to pound violently. He's here. He's really here. The enemy had truly come to the front lines. This trump card can only be used once, as long as he truly comes. I have confidence in making him die here. Young master, don't show yourself. He hasn't seen you before. I'll pretend to be you and speak with him. Without a word, Chen Fan stuffed the jade bracelet and that glazed figurine into his bosom. He stood up on the city wall, raising the breeding flag high. Gazing at the ghost nest thousands of meters away, he took a deep breath. His voice boomed, resounding through heaven and earth. He knew the Eternal Night Hall would definitely send someone to contact him. Chen Fan is here. I never change my name, nor alter my surname. Where is that magician? Skulking and hiding, like a cowardly rat, from the ghost nest came a light chuckle. Then in the next moment, the hundreds of ghost kings standing at the forefront of the nest began to sprint swiftly, forming 2 rows, kneeling on one knee with heads bowed. Behind them, the countless ghost soldiers also knelt on one knee. A short, hunched ghost figure emerged from the nest. Soon Jishin walked to the very front, gazing into the distance at Chen Fan standing on the wall. A flicker of amusement passed through his eyes. I am Jishin, the king of the Imperial clan. The ghost nest you encountered last night was merely a vanguard force. The ghost nest you see before you now is only a fraction of the Imperial clan's army. More troops are still gathering. Overrunning the Western Wasteland is but a matter of minutes. Your 3-layered defensive line is impressive, but it's just a futile struggle. Yet I am willing to offer you a chance to live. withdraw from the new continent, and cede the western wasteland. The Imperial clan will only occupy the Eternal Night continent, and we shall not interfere with each other. His purpose for this trip was simple, to feign negotiation and extract information about the new continent. But what he didn't know was that Chen Fan, standing on the defensive line, was so tense his body trembled. He barely even heard what the other was saying. He only wanted to confirm one thing, whether this person was truly the king of the Imperial clan. There was only one chance. If he succeeded, it would be a decapitation strike. With a fort behind the three-layer defensive line, a wall only a dozen meters long began to move swiftly. After aligning with one of the defensive lines, it moved like a tongue, slowly dragging that line along. He minimized the wall's movement speed as much as possible, reducing the noise to the lowest level. His voice trembled slightly from excessive excitement. If the Imperial clan is willing to give us a chance to live, that would be best. But how can I be sure you are the king of the Imperial clan? How can I be certain your words are not deceitful? Tarhar. The short, hunched ghost figure before the nest had a flicker of cunning in his eyes. He sensed that the other was stalling for time, which stirred a faint anger within him. He turned his head to gaze into the distance. There was no sign of her heaven-piercing pillar approaching. He didn't know the reserve count of the breeding heaven-piercing pillars, but if the other thought that our heaven-piercing pillar could kill him, then he was underestimating him far too much. Forget it, he suddenly laughed. A victor, when facing the defeated, should maintain an air of grace. It seems you lack sincerity. Then let me put it another way. If you open the defensive line now, let us land on the western wasteland, and tell us the way to cross the thunderstorm sea and reach the new continent. The Imperial clan will spare your lives. But if the Imperial clan has to fight its way into the western wasteland, not even a chicken or duck will remain. It seemed he could be almost certain now. Standing on the city wall, Chen Fan, gazing at the vast horde of ghosts in the distance, Chen Nai clutched Zhang Xinying, his palms drenched in nervous sweat. He didn't know if it would work, but at least he had to try. Just like that batch of defensive lines that hadn't been put to use, not every decision he made could turn the tide, but at least he had to try. Maybe it would succeed in the next moment. Chen Fan took a deep breath. His face flushed bright red, his body tensed up. Using all his strength, he waved the breeding flag in his hand and roared, "Wind rise, wind rise, wind rise." Amid the sand, as Chen Fan's voice fell, a scorching beam of light suddenly shot up from the edge of the Yellow Spring Pass region. Then a second, a third, a fourth. More and more scorching beams of light from the edge of the Yellow Spring Pass region rose one after another into the sky. Countless scorching beams of light completely enveloped the Yellow Spring Pass region. Then countless runes rapidly appeared on the ground of the Yellow Spring Pass region and were instantly lit up. The next moment, the ghost houses on the wasteland of the Yellow Spring Pass region vanished from their spots in an instant. Countless white lights emerged. That was the activation of the teleportation array across the entire ground of the Yellow Spring Pass region. A massive teleportation array had been laid out. Now the array activated forced teleportation, and the destination was the breeding Yellow Spring Pass region. The Tier 3-10 defense lines had already formed a circle above the clouds high over the defense lines, higher than the sky rails. Countless copper pipes were laid out. Now, one by one, the copper pipes were lit up. These copper pipes formed a teleportation array. This array was the landing point. When this array, thousands of meters above the ground, was lit up, countless ghost houses, like dumplings in a pot, appeared from the array in the sky and plummeted straight to the ground. In the reincarnation tower panel, a line clearly appeared. The Tier 3-10 defense lines had fully formed a ring. When the head and tail of the line connected, the entire airspace was sealed. The ghost houses falling from the teleportation array were instantly frozen in place, forced out by the array's transmission. More and more ghost creatures were forcibly pressed downward. Looking out, above the Yellow Spring Pass, a cylindrical pillar of flesh appeared out of thin air. High in the sky, countless ghost houses formed that massive pillar of flesh, and this pillar kept growing and extending. This was the forced teleportation of the Star Enforcers from the main hall. These past 7 days, countless Logistics Hall members had rushed around the Yellow Spring Pass region, with countless people joining to help. After Ghost Emperor Huan voluntarily cleared the area, an earth-shattering teleportation array was laid across the entire Yellow Spring Pass region. How could anyone not know this? A leaf right before your eyes was still a large. His teleportation array was massive. Chen Fan smiled. He laughed heartily. He laughed, almost heart-wrenchingly, and remembered. This is Janbei Breeding Division. This is my turf. What damn royal king. Even the heavenly king himself would have to kneel before me. The next moment, the breeding defense line, already forming a massive circle 81 kilometers long, with copper pipes rapidly transmitting ghost energy. One by one, the spirit cannons were quickly lit up and began to raise their barrels. One by one, the anti-aircraft cannons were lit up. The next moment, the earth shook and the mountains trembled. 81,000 spirit cannons began to pour out firepower wildly. Those star-red shells bombarded the sky as if there were no tomorrow, mixed with countless emerald beams from anti-aircraft cannons. Nearly 10,000 emerald beams from every corner of the connected defense line shot straight into the sky, converging at one point, as if to tear the heavens apart. Countless blood rains fell to the ground. Shen Fan's somewhat manic laughter echoed along the defense line. In these days, the immense pressure had kept him from sleeping. He had made many preparations. He didn't know if they would work. No one had given him the right answer. He could only figure it out himself. Everyone was hoping for a breeding victory. He didn't know if he could achieve it. He hadn't laughed in a long time. Heaven's will. Did you see that? But now, he could finally laugh heartily. Come on. Massive amounts of blood, mixed with green mucus and ghost house fragments, rained down on the defense line. Everyone stared blankly up at the formation. This might be the most shocking sight they had ever witnessed in their lives. That orbital weapon, enough to break through a line of defense, was now being slaughtered like livestock. And high in the sky, that short, staff-wielding ghost creature had items continuously shattering around him. The crown, the staff, the bracelet, the pendant, each item that broke meant he had died once more, shattering to shield him from a calamity. Damn it. Now, in his eyes, there was no longer any vision of the future, no joy in welcoming victory. His eyes were filled only with fear and panic. Trembling, he pulled the heaven-questioning spirit from his bosom, his lips quivering as he urged, Quick, I'll pay any price to survive. Tell me, is there a way? Tell me. I cannot tell you. A cold, familiar voice whispered in his ear. To hell with your heavenly secrets. Enraged, he hurled the heaven-questioning spirit in his hand away. He looked down at the carnage below, a trace of despair flashing in his eyes. His attention was entirely on the heaven-piercing pillar. He had never considered the existence of a forced teleportation array. Normally speaking, teleportation arrays weren't even something a first-tier continent should have. And crafting a forced teleportation array was something even a second-tier continent could barely achieve. He simply hadn't thought in that direction. The blood rain continued to fall, but on the Eternal Night continent, a large number of Northern Dynasty forces rushing toward the Yellow Spring Pass region suddenly halted in their treks. Sensing the fall of King Yi, one by one, the great generals narrowed their eyes. The king is dead. No need to assemble quickly, and no need to take the Western Wasteland Island first. We must first choose a new king. And each of them rather wanted to be that new king. Dark clouds covered the land of the Black Tortoise Plains, and an endless ghost nest was charging forward, heading straight for the Yellow Spring Pass region. But the next moment, when the ghost creature standing at the front on Ghost Tuan's shoulder raised a hand to signal, the massive ghost nest came to a uniform halt, like a movie suddenly paused in the dark, with almost no collisions. The ghost creature standing on Ghost Tuan's shoulder at the front narrowed his eyes, gazing toward the direction of Western Wasteland Island. He sensed that the king was dead. How could the king suddenly die on Western Wasteland Island? Careless, he muttered, looking down at his arm. A red line was gradually appearing on his wrist. This was the summoning of their royal clan's heavenly Dao. The immortal king is dead. There is no heir and no will. A new king must be chosen to lead the royal clan in continued growth and expansion. Stand by. His voice hoarse, he issued his final command. Then, dozens of ghost creatures began laying down a teleportation array in the ground. The moment the array was complete, he stepped forward and vanished from the spot. When his vision cleared again, he had already appeared on the primordial continent. The entire continent was shrouded in endless darkness, but it didn't hinder his sight. At this moment, dozens of great generals were already in the Great Hall, having arrived before him. All ghosts remained silent, not a single one speaking, quietly waiting for all ghosts to assemble. All the high-ranking ghost creatures of the royal clan were generally not tall, standing about as high as a normal human's thigh. When traveling, they would usually stand on the shoulder of a tall ghost. Soon all ghosts had gathered. The one presiding over the meeting was an old ghost with a graying beard, standing beside the throne in the Great Hall. Parsley, he said, the king of the royal clan is dead, killed in a trap set by the breeding clan. The breeding clan laid down a massive teleportation array in the Yellow Spring Pass region. The king didn't know this, fell into an ambush, and died unexpectedly. We need to choose a new king to continue leading the royal clan forward. Since its inception, the royal clan has always been ruled by the previous king. We have no experience in selecting a new king. Today's main discussion is from which directions we should select the new king. Independent, a ghostly figure seated on the left side of the hall, spoke coldly. I am the ghost sovereign. The reason the former king fell is largely because his strength was insufficient. Had he possessed the cultivation of a ghost sovereign, how could it have come to this? You're so formidable. Why didn't you rebel before? Another ghostly figure on the opposite chair sneered. The first ghostly figure shrank back slightly and fell silent. Then I thought it was caution. If the former king had been cautious enough, he wouldn't have worked into the trap. That should be intelligence. Our king should have been intelligent enough. Not quite. Just then, a voice emerged from the ghostly crowd. Shouldn't it be dark affinity? Otherwise, where would the ghost nest come from? As his words fell, the hall suddenly fell into silence. But soon a consensus formed. Correct. The first selection criterion should be dark affinity. Good. The old ghost standing by the throne spoke slowly. Then please proceed to the black abyss, one by one, to test your respective dark affinity. The next moment, the old ghost rose and worked toward the hall, soon arriving at a rift in the primordial continent. The old ghost leaped down, and behind him, ghostly figures followed closely. Then the ghost clans and ghost emperors who had joined the royal family exchanged glances with each other, and also jumped in, falling endlessly. None knew how long they fell, but gradually their falling speed slowed. As their vision cleared, they found themselves above a sea. This place is the Black Abyss, the old ghost began to explain. Before this, few ghosts have set foot here. This place is a royal secret. Currently, the Black Abyss still holds 40% of its dark reserves. You may each step forward and try. Simply approach the Black Abyss, and your mind will receive the corresponding information. Yet moments later, after 3 candidate ghost emperors had stepped forward to test, not a single one, to match the former king's affinity. The old ghost silently watched this scene. In truth, he knew very well, to have the highest dark affinity, no ghost here could surpass the king in dark affinity. However, he casually glanced among the dozens of generals, as seemingly indifferent ghostly figure, his child, a ghostly being. Having a child of one's own is no easy feat, so when he finally had his child, he didn't announce it immediately. Instead, he secretly brought the child to the Black Abyss to test his dark affinity. The result was higher than the king's. Excitement and fear coexisted within him, because if it were discovered that one's dark affinity surpassed the king's, they would be executed on the spot. So he concealed his child's existence, and placed his child in the ghost nest, starting as a lowly soldier, while secretly offering help. Now, in less than 100 years, his child had already become a ghost emperor. He knew the time had come. At last, it was his child's turn to test dark affinity. That ghostly figure, clearly a head taller than the others, about the height of an adult man, showed a flicker of surprise in his eyes. I forged a great ghost, requiring only 0.4 dark affinity. It seems even lower than an immortal king. Ghost Crane Star King is born. Before the other ghosts could react, the old ghost who had presided over the meeting already roared with red-rimmed eyes. Ghost Crane, a great general, is now a ghost emperor. His dark affinity is even higher than the former king's. Both his combat power and dark affinity are excellent. A worthy candidate for the new king. Does anyone object? A unified chorus of agreement echoed from the depths of the hall. The crowd of ghostly figures fell into a complex silence. What's the rush? The ghost sovereign who had spoken earlier in the hall replied with a slightly displeased expression. Aren't there still a few who haven't tested yet? And you're already announcing the results. Besides, dark affinity is only one of the selection criteria, isn't it? Old Ghost lowered his head, composing his emotions. He knew he had let a bit too much show. He tried his best to return to his usual state. Continuing, Xianxia said, immediately after, the remaining few great generals who hadn't tested yet stepped forward one after another, but their dark affinity was no match for the one beside the Black Abyss. That day, standing there watching the commotion, he looked with a complex expression toward the pitch-black sea surface not far away. At this moment, he realized for the first time the difference between a regular army and an amateur one. The main source of their ghost clan's nests was the nests formed deep in the sea. According to Old Ghost, those were naturally formed by heaven and earth, but the royal clan could mass-produce ghost creatures on their own. The contrast was clear as day. Just then, the royal clan ghost houses standing not far away looked toward them, signaling that this batch of surrendered ghost clan creatures should also step forward and test. They naturally knew that no matter how high their tested dark affinity was, they could never become the king of the royal clan. Soon, everyone had finished testing, but most faces showed little change. No one knew what they were brewing. Everyone, follow me back to the primordial continent for the next selection. Old Ghost began to preside again. The teleportation array slowly activated. Just as everyone vanished in an instant, the pitch-black sea surface, which had already settled into calm, suddenly began to churn again, erupting with bursts of black mist, and started to rapidly condense. This time, what condensed was not a mere ghost creature, but a massive ghost king dozens of meters tall. This ghost king standing on the sea surface, looked at his own hands and muttered, "Even heaven won't take me. My old man's 95 lives are too tough." He was certain he had died once, but he didn't know how long ago. He felt as if he had been in utter pitch blackness, and his mind had received a lot of information. Yet before he could digest it, he sensed a horde of ghosts approaching. From their chatter, he learned that the royal clan's king had been killed by Fan Yu. They were now selecting a new king through dark affinity. But he could spawn a ghost creature with just 0.1 dark affinity, lower than any ghost present. There was also a dark saint body he didn't fully understand, but he grasped the death authority in that information. He used that authority to revive himself. Then, as the black mist on the sea rapidly condensed, one ghost house after another emerged. Big King, an old ghost, slowly taking shape, looked around in a daze. So there really is an underworld. Bullshit. Jiwu's eyes reddened as he grinned, lifting old ghost and placing him in his palm, then looking at the ghost houses slowly forming around him. Ghost 1, Ghost 2, and Senhar. Everyone's back. This isn't the time for old tales. This place is dangerous. Let's get out of here fast. The next moment, a massive number of ghost houses rapidly condensed, and spending daddy's money without a care. He didn't know what the black abyss was. Its dark reserves were only at 40%. Anyway, it wasn't his. Through the dark saint body, he could absorb the black mist from the black abyss to convert into his own ghost nest army. In the time it takes an incense stick to burn, the black abyss was completely empty, and in exchange, was an army of ghost nests so vast it was nearly endless. Time to run. Jiwu glanced around, chose a direction, and he waved his hand grandly, and shouted with some high spirits, "Brothers, follow me eastward. If we're lucky, we can find a small island, and officially retire. This time, I won't die again." He wasn't a fool. He had clearly seen the words dark saint body. He knew that if he set foot on the path of conquest, he would surely carve out a name for himself. But so what? Even if he conquered vast territories, what then? Right now, he didn't want to care about anything. He shut his mind to everything, determined to retire. The massive ghost nest began racing across the sea surface, from the sun hanging in the sky until it set. This place was miraculous. Even in broad daylight, the ghost nest could survive normally. The farther he ran, Ghost 195 took the lead, sprinting at the front. He ran for 7 days and 7 nights, until the sea gradually ceased to be fluid. When he could no longer run, he started swimming. He never tired. He had never felt so exhilarated in his life. This place was nowhere near the waters of the eternal night continent. As for where it was, he had no idea. But who cared? Ghost 195 laughed heartily. He saw a desolate island in the distance, uninhabited. The vast ghost nest landed on the barren island in a grand procession. Ghost 195 stood atop the highest peak of the desolate island, brimming with pride and ambition. Surrounded by a crowd of old subordinates, he declared, "Everyone, from now on, we are all retired. Starting today, we formally establish our race as the Retirement Clan. Now, you may all begin enjoying your retirement life." But little did he know, on the distant sea surface, a massive illusory black tortoise was now racing across the sea with a cold expression, heading straight for the island where 95 was. No matter how far, vengeance will be exacted. The mission must be fulfilled. This was the black tortoise. Once locked on, even if the target died and revived, it would lock on again and propagate in Janbei. Chen Fan was now standing on the county platform with a full smile. 7 days had passed since the massacre of the royal clan. During these 7 days, the ghost nest had not launched another attack, giving them a long period to digest their resources. The most notable result was that all the building blueprints collected during this time had been fully appraised. Today, on the 7th day, he found the Vermilion Bird Cannon blueprint. Yes, it was complete. The Heavenly Dao cannons were complete. Now it was time for the 4-in-1 fusion. Chen Fan took a deep breath. He looked at the 4 blue-grade divine cannons placed beside him, and the building panel deep in his soul. He selected the fusion option. The next moment, the azure dragon soared into the 9 heavens. The black tortoise shook heaven and earth. The white tiger roared in the mountain streams, and the vermilion bird cried out in all directions. These 4 cannon towers seemed to come alive, beginning to melt rapidly, and gradually coalesce into an extremely exaggerated heavy cannon. Building name, Heavenly Dao Cannon. Building grade, purple. Building level, 10. Building effect, city defense building, max level effect. All things exterminate dogs. Heaven and earth share longevity. Chen Fan squinted slightly, gazing at the panel before him. Teacher, explain. He truly couldn't see anything impressive about it. The only special aspect was that this building required no upgrades. It was level 10 as soon as it was crafted. As for the name of this max level effect, it sounded a bit arrogant. All things exterminate dogs. Let's test the effect. He immediately turned and walked to the defense line, heading to the teleport town, preparing to go to the Janbei Desert. That was a go place for testing. He went to the Janbei Desert. Chen Fan stood on the African platform, gazing down at the temporary wall, tens of meters tall below, and the Heavenly Dao cannon mounted on it. The next moment, when the copper barrel was lit, the patterns on the Heavenly Dao cannon below were illuminated. He learned there were 2 attack modes. One was point target, one was area target. First, he tried the area mode. The heavenly Dao cannon was lit. For some reason, above the sky of the land, patches of clouds quickly darted. Then the cannon barrel of the heavenly Dao cannon fired an unremarkable shell, which blasted into the clouds. After a brief pause, a thunderclap suddenly rang out. In an instant, nearly endless lightning, from the dark clouds, began to bombard the Janbei desert, in an extremely dense and violent manner. In the entire world, no light of sun or moon could be seen, only a storm of thunder and lightning raged wildly. Its scope was vast, covering nearly a third of the desert. Chen Fan, standing in Africa, gazed at the scene before him. He felt a bit weary. His vision was growing blurry. Countless bolts of lightning nearly grazed Africa as they fell. At this moment, his eyes were fixed only on the lightning filling the sky. The heavenly Dao cannon was his. Naturally, it wouldn't strike him, like a torrential rain of thunder and lightning. It lasted for about the time it takes to burn an incense stick, then suddenly dissipated. The low clouds parted. He looked down again. The desert was now covered in large patches of crystalline grains. This area of effect attack method was suitable for dealing with large waves of ghost tides. Then, he planned to try another point target attack method, but when he tried to fire at a flat angle, the heavenly Dao cannon panel on the interface kept flashing red, and the manual fire button turned gray, displaying cannot fire. In the lower right corner, there was also a line of gray small text, force fire. Only when he raised the angle, did the fire panel stop flashing red. Strange. Chen Fan's brow furrowed slightly. He looked down at the heavenly Dao cannon sitting in the desert. What's going on here? He clearly remembered that when building the yellow spring mouth No. 1. Defense line. Back then, even if the cannon barrel was flat, the panel didn't flash red. Why is it flashing red here? Could it be that the power is too great and will affect the buildings? This place is located in the Janbei Desert. There are indeed many buildings outside. Returning to the defense line, he could force fire, but since the panel was flashing red, there was no need to stubbornly go against the panel. After getting familiar with it, Chen Fan returned to the yellow spring mouth No. 1 defense line. He looked at the heavenly Dao cannon placed on the line, leveled the cannon barrel, aimed at the yellow spring mouth area, the place where 95 Kixi once stood. This time, the panel didn't flash red, it could fire normally, but 3 options popped up. Heavenly cannon consumes 1 million ghost stones. Dao cannon consumes 10 million ghost stones. All things begin. Heaven and earth share longevity. Consumes 100 million ghost stones. Chen Fan raised an eyebrow. This heavenly Dao cannon had quite a few uses. Just for point target method, there were 3 options. The most expensive heavenly cannon, one shot would cost him 100 million ghost stones. Was this a joke? He built one heavenly Dao cannon for only 10 million ghost stones. Let's try the 1 million one first. The next moment, the cannon barrel leveled. Several white lights suddenly appeared in front of the barrel, forming the character heaven. Then an extremely thick, blazing pillar of light burst forth from the cannon mouth, blasting toward the yellow spring mouth area. This blazing pillar was a full 100 meters thick. Where it passed, ghost houses were almost instantly vaporized. He could feel from this pillar of light an incredibly terrifying aura. A ghost emperor definitely couldn't withstand it. They will surely die. Next, he tried the 10 million ghost stone Dao cannon shot. Chen Fan looked at the heavenly Dao cannon with eager anticipation. If a 1 million shot was this strong, then a 10 million shot. He gritted his teeth slightly, decided to just try the 100 million one. Though it was a bit wasteful, he at least needed to know its power to better use the heavenly Dao cannon. When he clicked confirm fire, the heavenly Dao cannon didn't activate immediately. Instead, a symbol resembling a nuclear bomb popped up and kept flashing red. Extreme power. Please carefully confirm whether to activate. If it hadn't warned him, it would be fine, but the warning only made him want to activate it more. The next moment, the heavenly Dao cannon began charging, and in front of the barrel, several white lights gradually condensed, forming 8 characters. Heaven and earth share longevity. All things exterminate dogs. After a few breaths, the barrel lit up. Chen Fan, standing beside the heavenly Dao cannon, suddenly felt his perspective pulled infinitely upward. The perspective suddenly zoomed upward without limit. He felt as if his soul had been pulled out of his body, hovering high above the 9 heavens, gazing down upon the entire eternal night continent. This was the first time he had seen the eternal night continent so vividly. He immediately located the position of the western wasteland island, which was extremely conspicuous from this height. But before he could react to why he was in this state, he saw it. He saw a blazing white light. A sudden mist appeared at the site of the western wasteland island. It was a pillar of light, and this pillar of light was plunging deep into the depths of the eternal night continent at an incredible speed. This blazing pillar of light blasted all the way toward the eastern part of the eternal night continent, to the farthest eastern point. This blazing pillar of light, spanning the entire continent, all ghost dwellings along its path were instantly reduced to ashes. After the trees were extinguished, the pillar of light reached its end, and then slowly faded away. Chen Fan's perspective quickly returned to normal. Chen Fan fell silent. Beside him, Lame Monkey and July fell silent. Everyone on the defensive line fell silent. All eyes turned in unison toward the front of the line, at that absolutely straight, absolutely smooth strip of nothingness about 20 kilometers wide. This strip of nothingness extended from the defensive line, ignoring all terrain obstacles, piercing through mountains, cutting off rivers, tearing through clouds, and at an indescribable speed, rapidly stretched to the other end of the continent. Theoretically speaking, if there were enough ghost stones, one could build a heavenly Dao cannon every 20 kilometers, cross the eternal night continent, then fire them all at once, evenly distributed, choosing a single shot of a million ghost stones worth of the myriad things offering. After a few breaths, the barrel lit up. In just an instant, all ghost dwellings on the entire continent would be completely cleared. Of course, the cost would be that the eternal night continent would become rather flat. Chen Fan stared blankly at all this, until the sound transmission talisman in his bosom kept relaying the voice of the Medicine King Vala's Vala Master, only then snapping back to reality. Sack Master, those people are alive. Good, I'll be right there. He took a deep breath. He strode toward the teleportation formation behind him. He vaguely thought of a way to subdue the eternal night continent. As long as he gathered all the ghost dwellings in one line, a few blasts from the heavenly Dao cannon would clear them all. But how to get these ghost clans to gather together? As he worked, he shook the bell in his hand, the heavenly spirit bell. Is there a way to make the ghost clans all gather in one line? Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. I cannot tell you. Chen Fan curled his lip and stuffed the bell back into his bosom. This was one of the spoils of war from the great battle 7 days ago. His assessment of this spoil was very useful. Although many questions were met with no comment, it was still very handy. At Sunset City, a middle-aged man was healing his wounds in a medicinal field. As usual, he was now smiling as he looked not far away at the frolicking YY and his parents. YY, how did Chen Fan give you such a name back then? Didn't you argue against it? Good YY, he growled, speaking human words. This matter was taught to me by the boss. I can't teach you either. Besides, you're a crocodile. Why are you always trying to torque? That's not good. Just then, Chen Fan arrived with Lame Monkey. Watching the 3 crocodiles lying on the ground, biting and rolling around, the fatigue on his body eased considerably. King Zyro, YY's parents have been saved. Although their injuries aren't fully healed yet, they won't die. The Jane and He family, those people who studied strange beasts for generations, really do have something. YY was just bidding farewell to his parents. Seeing Chen Fan approach, he happily crawled to Chen Fan's feet, rolled over, then dashed off toward the outskirts of Sunset City. YY has been very busy these days, only occasionally coming to check on his parents. Most of the time, he's been reclaiming those strange beasts. Yes, the great escape from the Eternal Night continent wasn't just for humans, but also for those strange beasts that usually hid in every corner, was also fleeing with the crowd, heading to the desolate island. After YY and Chen Fan watched YY leave, he was still boiling the jaded ledger. The middle-aged man, who had long since recovered, asked, "How should I address you?" "Sir, just call me that one." "Then how is your health, sir?" "Not bad, just a bit weak." "Let's take a walk." In the Janbei defense line, Chen Fan and the middle-aged man walked side by side along the line. The middle-aged man, who had struggled back from the brink of death, now had one hand behind his back. Gazing at the humans rushing back and forth across the wasteland, said somewhat dazedly, "You already know my identity. Ask whatever you want to ask." Eternal Night continent has suffered this great calamity. Lives are lost, and the land is covered in ruins. You mentioned that Fan Yu sees Eternal Night continent as his own. Chen Fan worked expressionlessly along the Janbei defense line, occasionally reaching out to touch the cold temperature coming from the stone wall. The man beside him turned out to be the heavenly Dao of the new continent, who had self-destructed before the new continent fell, perishing together with the ghost dynasty, and becoming this kind of state that even he himself didn't understand. Not the heavenly Dao, but not human either. Eternal Night continent is a first-grade continent. The middle-aged man slowly nodded. I don't know how vast the entire world is, but I can be certain that Eternal Night continent is just a corner of it. When Eternal Night continent ascends to second grade, the level cap for continent buildings will increase, and some restrictions will be lifted. More blueprints for high-grade buildings will emerge, for example, the heaven-reaching Tila. Normally, it should be a building unlocked only for second-grade continents. I don't know how Fan Yu got it. Speaking of this, the middle-aged man turned his head somewhat oddly to look at Chen Fan and added, I also sensed the change in Eternal Night continent just now. That was the mark left by the heavenly Dao cannon. That's also a building exclusive to second-grade continents. You didn't get authorization for it. Where did the authorization come from? Chen Fan pondered silently. There was no authorization. In the panel there were the words fuse. I clicked it, and it fused. I didn't feel any restrictions. But he quickly realized that others didn't have a panel, so of course they couldn't click to fuse. Of course it cannot be fused. Looking back now, the panel was more like a portable heavenly Dao, and a fully unlocked one at that, a lucky gain. He skipped this question, and continued to ask, what are the main functions and duties of the heavenly Dao? Good question. The middle-aged man let out a long breath. The heavenly Dao itself has no emotions, nor consciousness. It serves as a link between the upper and lower realms. This world has a supreme heavenly Dao. When a continent meets all the conditions to ascend to second grade, the heavenly Dao of that continent will report this news to the supreme heavenly Dao. Then the supreme heavenly Dao will bestow the heavenly Dao's blessing, raising the continent to second grade. Chen Fan remained silent for a long time, only working side by side with a middle-aged man along the Janbei defense line. After a moment, he continued to ask, then, sir, the Eternal Night Continent, what are the conditions for ascending to second grade? The middle-aged man didn't answer immediately, but gave Chen Fan a deep look before continuing. The conditions for first grade continent to ascend to second grade are not simple. There must be a force that has achieved unification, and that force must have 20 max-level buildings. Ensure the ghost fire is raised to level 10. And complete the rule the world mission. Once these conditions are met, the continent can ascend to second grade. No. Chen Fan frowned slightly. Sir, Fan, you arrived at the new continent and completed these conditions, but the new continent did not ascend to second grade. Yes. The middle-aged man said somewhat leisurely. That continent once had a name. It wasn't called the new continent. It was called Tanky Continent. Normally speaking, Tanky Continent should have ascended to second grade, but did you forget what I said earlier? The heavenly Dao that helped an entire continent ascend, the heavenly Dao must first report this matter upward. Only then can Tanky Continent ascend to a second grade continent. If no one reports it for you, how could it possibly ascend to a second grade continent? Tanky Continent has no heavenly Dao. The former heavenly Dao now stands before you. Some races and continents, their own heavenly Dao likely fell in the primordial sound. These races and continents become rootless races and continents. No one reports their deeds upward. This is why some races that lost their heavenly Dao go to extreme madness to seize a continent, because only by occupying a continent can they give birth anew to a heavenly Dao of their own race. Only then can they be accepted again by this world. Chen Fan nodded. He basically understood. The ghost race is the same. No, the middle-aged man shook his head solemnly. The imperial race you saw, they are a professional race. You can think of it as, they have a basic understanding of this world, though most likely, they lack the qualifications to join the war. They are weak races in the mire, but when facing some first-grade continents, they can still crush them. They clearly know what they will gain after conquering a continent. Their goal is to wage war everywhere, to plunder the black abyss everywhere. But the ghost race is different. The ghost race was born naturally in the primordial continent, after it was fully invaded by darkness. In terms of life hierarchy, ghosts born on the primordial continent have a higher life hierarchy than those born from dark mist, that is, the imperial race. Of course, this doesn't mean they are stronger. The ghost race knows almost nothing about this world. They only know their primordial continent is about to shatter. They must quickly conquer a continent, is for race. Continent. Black abyss. War Maya. They know nothing of these basics. Even their understanding of the heavenly Dao is limited to knowing that with a heavenly Dao, they can have children. What is the primordial continent? Chen Fan's brow furrowed slightly. This goes back to a very, very long time ago, the middle-aged man said, somewhat dazed. A very, very long time ago, this world had only one continent. Besides humans, there were many races. Later, darkness invaded. The primordial continent shattered. One continent after another appeared across the world, carrying the remnants of the former races, and the primordial continent broke into hundreds of pieces, scattered in the darkness. The fragments of the primordial continent are extremely valuable. If they appeared in the War Maya, they could trigger countless forces to wage furious battles. The primordial continent where the ghost race resides is one of those hundreds of fragments. If possible, if Fanyu were to occupy and absorb that primordial continent of the ghost race, it would greatly aid Fanyu's future development. Chen Fan frowned deeply. He digested this information. This was the first time gaining such an intuitive understanding of this world. But the imperial race didn't seem to care about that primordial land. They were more focused on the Yanai continent. What do they know? The middle-aged man said helplessly. They don't even qualify to join the War Maya. They are low-level races, only able to scavenge in the outskirts. How could they know anything about the primordial continent? One more question. Chen Fan asked what concerned him most. What is the War Maya? The middle-aged man murmured as if lost in memory. It is an extremely chaotic place. How should I describe it? Fanyu's heaven-piercing pillars there are considered conventional probing weapons. Heavenly Dao cannons firing at each other is not uncommon. And those heavenly Dao cannons aren't 10th grade. They are 20th grade, even 30th grade. Every day, races and continents join. Of course, every day, races and continents are completely shattered, devoured clean. Once you enter, it's like a Maya, deeply trapped within it, hard to escape unscathed. the necessary conditions to join there. If it's a continent, it must be a second-tier continent, and a defensive line must be built along its edge. The line must be uniformly level 20. Only then can one barely qualify to join. Otherwise, you'd be shattered the moment you enter. No one even needs to attack you. You'd break apart on your own. Continents can move. Shen Fang keenly caught the hidden message in the painting. Of course. The middle-aged man chuckled. After ascending to a second-tier continent, a blueprint named Heavenly Mystic Thruster would be unlocked. Some repairing the walls. When people or structures on this continent kill ghostly beings, there's a chance this blueprint will drop. By placing many heavenly mystic thrusters along the continent's edge, the continent can move. Understood? Chen Fan nodded. At that moment, he suddenly realized that gentleman was more important than he thought. A heavenly Dao that can converse in real time. This is something no other race or continent has. What is the Thunderstorm Sea region? I truly don't know. The middle-aged man sighed helplessly. Never seen or heard of it before. One last question. Chen Fan spoke again. I want to gather all the royal ghost nests into a single straight line, then use the heavenly Dao to wipe them out in one go. It might sound a bit far-fetched, but do you think it's possible? The middle-aged man remained silent for a long time. After a while, he finally spoke. It's impossible. Don't even think about it. Those ghost nests aren't fools. They won't stand in a neat row waiting for you to blast them. The two of them worked shoulder to shoulder along the Janbei defense line. Meanwhile, on the other side, in a great hall, within the primordial land shrouded in darkness, dozens of royal generals sat expressionless in the palace. We need to unite now. The new king has yet to be chosen. Old Ghost continued hosting the meeting as the chair. His eyelids drooped low, trying his best to hide the gleam in his eyes from others. The royal black abyss was stolen unexpectedly. If nothing unexpected happens, it must have been discovered and stolen by another race. In the past, the Black Abyss was heavily guarded, but after the former king's death, many guards were withdrawn. We must take the Eternal Night continent immediately, then find a new Black Abyss. Without the Black Abyss, it means we've lost our source of new troops. According to everyone's opinion, within the next 7 days, all generals will gather their forces from the Yellow Spring Pass, Janbei, and the Guandan Plains launch a full assault on all 3 fronts. The first general to set foot on the defense line will become the new king of the royal clan. What does everyone think? As his words fell, the ghost kings in the hall exchanged glances. All saw the same thought in each other's eyes. This is good. This way they all have a chance to become king. Otherwise, if it's based on who has the highest dark affinity, it would inevitably feel somewhat unfair. Then it's settled. In 7 days, we launched the total assault. In the darkness, a ghost nest was the first to respond. Then more and more ghostly beings emerged, responding within the hall. After all the ghost nests had faded away, Old Ghost hurried forward. After looking around left and right, he grabbed Qiyi's sleeve. Deep in his eyes, flickered the excitement he had suppressed for years. Qiyi, am your father. Qiyi, too, was about to walk out of the hall. His expression instantly darkened. Looked at the old ghost grabbing him, and said hoarsely, Elder Kian, I respect you, as a trusted aide of the former king. I honor you for life, Elder Kian, but are you going too far? Are you implying I want to sit on this throne, and let a false immortal be your puppet? Old Ghost didn't mind. He just took a deep breath, and recounted an ancient secret. In the hall, Old Ghost's voice slowly echoed, telling a secret of the royal clan. After a long while, Qiyi understood. Stunned, he stood frozen in place, and now, he has become a ghost emperor. But after learning that he suddenly had a father, he still found it somewhat hard to accept. He said that was why, during the test, the Sword King's trusted aide seemed to favor him a bit. Just keep this to yourself for now. No need to change how you address me yet. Old Ghost took a deep breath. Now the main issue is the theft from the royal clan's Black Abyss. I will help you be the first to ascend the breeding defense line. By then, the other ghosts will have nothing to say. Cao Qi's eyes flickered as he nodded. He knew the Eternal Night Hall would definitely send someone to contact him. Chen Fan and that middle-aged man continued, working side by side along the Janbei defense line. Chen Fan, the middle-aged man said calmly in a low voice, I don't know much about the breeding situation, but I've thought of a way based on your proposal. You can judge from the breeding situation whether this method is feasible. If we can pull out the royal clan and the ghost clan, and usher in several years of peaceful development, there will still be many dangers ahead. The breeding clan is still not strong enough. The royal clan is not a ghost creature, born from the darkness of the primordial land. The darkness of the angel land is too dense for them. They will feel uncomfortable, so they will launch a full-scale attack soon. I will negotiate with the heavenly Dao of the Eternal Night continent, asking it to self-destruct and collapse the continent, leaving only a small amount of land to accommodate the ghost nests. I will burn myself out, sharing the heaven's lifespan, and return to the world, suppressing all the seas near the Eternal Night continent, so the ghost nests cannot enter the sea for a short time. This way, the ghost nests can only breed on the remaining small land, and can be swept away by the heavenly Dao cannon, resolving this crisis. However, for this plan to succeed, there must be a prerequisite, that a continent has 2 heavenly Daos. one to self-destruct and collapse the continent, and one to self-destruct and seal the seas. Only then can it work. As luck would have it, the Eternal Night continent happens to have two heavenly Daos. If this plan succeeds, rule the world, the amount of ghost fire needed will also be much less, and after the heavenly Dao's blessing descends and the golden domain falls, the collapsed parts of the Eternal Night continent will also recover. You should have seen this on the new continent. I don't want you to die. Chen Fan shook his head lightly. As long as we withstand the next few waves of ghost nest attacks, one day we will counterattack. The middle-aged man's brows relaxed, and he smiled. Don't rush. I haven't finished yet. All 3 drops of my heavenly Dao essence blood have burned out. Right now, I'm barely alive, with only 3 months left to live. But if the plan goes smoothly, the Eternal Night continent will give birth to a new heavenly island. During the condensation process, it will also absorb my remnant soul, making me the new heavenly island of the Eternal Night continent. Chen Fan was silent for a long time before speaking. What conditions must be met for a continent to condense a new heavenly island? The breeding clan unified the new continent, yet no new heavenly island was formed. The middle-aged man stood on the city wall, waved his hand grandly, and said, "Move out," gazing at the 2 crocodiles fighting in the distance at Nameless City. For a continent to condense a heavenly Dao, it needs sufficient prosperity. For example, after the Eternal Night continent's heavenly Dao self-destructs, if the breeding clan reconquers the Eternal Night continent, and a large population scatters across it again, making the Eternal Night continent gradually lively, once the prosperity reaches a certain level, a heavenly Dao can be reborn. Don't think about making the new continent prosperous to condense a new heavenly Dao there. The middle-aged man said slowly, it won't condense. The people on the new continent now are not natives born and raised there, so they don't count toward prosperity. Chen Fan said nothing. Chen Fan just walked silently along the city wall. He understood now. A continent needs prosperity to condense a heavenly Dao, and it must be people native to the continent. Looking, it seemed to discourage continents from attacking each other. In that case, this plan is up to you. The middle-aged man let out a long breath, smiled, and continued instructing like a nagging old man. This matter must not be delayed. No one knows when the ghost nests will launch their full attack. I'll go contact the original heavenly Dao of the Eternal Night continent first. Then he looked into the distance, at the 2 crocodiles fighting in Xiang City. He deceived Chen Fan. After reclaiming the Eternal Night continent, once prosperity reaches a certain level, it is indeed possible to begin condensing the heavenly Dao. But after his remnant soul self-destructed, it could only linger between heaven and earth for 3 months. It was impossible to achieve within 3 months. The rainy season was a time when smiles were hard to come by. The level of prosperity needed to condense the heavenly Dao, the demands on construction speed were extremely high. This departure would be a farewell forever. In the following days, Fang Yu was extremely busy. Large numbers of laborers were gathered together, and emergency training began. Fang Yu excelled at large-scale infrastructure. One of its core strengths was modular construction. Although that gentleman had no fame, from his tone of entrusting his legacy, Fang Yu roughly guessed that after his remnant soul self-destructed, the time it could remain between heaven and earth was limited. If he could not, within that time, restore a certain level of prosperity to the Eternal Night continent, that gentleman would never return. But that gentleman still didn't fully understand Fang Yu. It was time to show him Fang Yu's construction speed. The Eternal Night continent was extremely quiet, with little activity, until that day, just after dawn. Huge numbers of ghost nests began descending upon the Eternal Night continent. These were the remaining troops stored in the primordial land. With no reinforcements to follow, the royal clan did not plan a protracted war, but prepared for a general assault, to take the Eternal Night continent in one fell swoop. Huge numbers of ghost nests gathered on the Eternal Night continent. The general assault was coming. But just then, Dewey, standing at the front, suddenly shuddered, and realized the ground was beginning to tremble, the tremors growing stronger. The earth began to shake and mountains to sway. An earthquake, he muttered instinctively. Meanwhile, in Jiangbei, after the massive gathering of ghost nests, Feng Yu received the news and initiated the plan. "I like to name some plans. This plan was proposed by you. Name it." Chen Fan stood on the Jiangbei defense line, gazing at the gentleman before him. "All right." The middle-aged man pondered for a moment, then smiled. "Let's call it the Eternal Night Reboot Plan." At that moment, aside from the Western Wasteland Island, the entire Eternal Night continent had begun to shake. The continent in the Lindsea region started to slowly collapse, sinking into the seawater, kicking up massive waves. The entire continent was like a pat of butter dropped into boiling water, beginning to melt rapidly. And going first, the middle-aged man glanced at Chen Fan, then looked through the air behind him, at the 2 crocodiles in Sunset City, a faint smile on his lips. "How wonderful. Fang Yu truly has great potential. After I'm gone, take good care of those 2 crocodiles. They have names. The male is called Big Croc, The female is called Little Croc. To name them. I did. I think I understand now why they so quickly accepted their child being called Waiwei. Yes, because I'm terrible at naming too. I haven't even given myself a good name. The middle-aged man sighed helplessly, then took a step forward, hovering above the Janbei defense line. He took a deep breath, he spread his arms, saying nothing more, and his body began to shadow like a bamboo shadow, slowly dissipating between heaven and earth. The scattered white light sank into the sea. The ocean beyond the Janbei defense line began to churn violently, as if boiling. The ghost nests in the sea struggled in agony before turning into corpses, floating in the surface. A faint blue glow spread across the sea surface. Chen Fan silently watched it all, then turned and walked toward the teleportation array beside him. This was not his battlefield. His battlefield was at the Yellow Spring Pass. What's going on? The Eternal Night continent began to collapse rapidly from its edges. Dui, who had been planning to sneak across the Lin Sea, some repairing the walls, looked at the ghost nests nearby, falling into the sea along with the collapsing continent. Those ghost nests, as soon as they entered the sea, and soon it was spoken of across the continent, as if the sea were filled with countless springs. This is the heavenly Dao destroying itself. The continent collapses, the old ghost explained quickly. Some continents, before their destruction, the heavenly Dao will destroy itself. What's the situation with those blue lights in the continent sea? I don't know. The old ghost shook his head quickly. If the king's heaven questioning spirit were here, we would know what's going on. Something's not right. Qi looked around with a grim expression. Let's return to the continent where the ghost clan is. The next moment, a teleportation array was quickly laid at their feet, but it couldn't be activated. The space is sealed. Teleportation is impossible. Qi's expression grew even darker. For some reason, a strong sense of unease faintly stirred in his heart. Did he pick Jiwu from some ancient text? The continuous mountain ranges on both sides of the defense line began to slowly collapse. Each time a section collapsed, the defense line filled the gap. Finally, from the original 27-kilometer gap, it expanded to an 81-kilometer gap. Countless breeding members stood on this defense line. This 81-kilometer defense line was formed from 3 original 10th-level defense lines, merged into one. Gazing toward the heart of the Eternal Night continent, Chen Fan, like everyone else, stood on the defense line, looking into the distance. This was his first time seeing the heavenly Dao destroy itself. The sky began to darken. He could clearly hear, from heaven and earth, a sound like countless shattering glass. A layer of brown yellow mist covered the entire continent. Above, a scarlet rain poured down on the Eternal Night continent. The heavenly Dao of the Eternal Night continent had rained many times. This was the first rain it shed for itself a lament. Mountains collapsed one after another. Lakes churned and surged. The continent began to crumble. Countless cracks appeared on the ground, breaking into chunks, sinking into the seabed, and a large number of ghost nests were forced to gather on the few remaining landmasses. Until dusk arrived, after nearly an entire day had passed, the Eternal Night continent had completely collapsed. Now, the only remaining part of the Eternal Night continent was like a piece of dove chocolate, extremely neat and orderly, and this slender landmass. Countless ghost houses were piled up, and on the breeding Yellow Spring defense line, Wu Men was at full level. The heavenly Dao cannon stood quietly on the city wall. They've lined up in a straight line. Chen Fan gazed at the scene before him. He murmured softly. The self-destruction of 2 heavenly Daos had completed this nearly impossible plan. Huge numbers of ghost nests, gathering them all on this narrow landmass. Chen Fan. Just then, an old ghost with a somewhat aged appearance was sitting on a ghost emperor's shoulder, his eyes full of fear, racing wildly through the ghost nest, until he reached the defense line. He jumped down from the ghost emperor's shoulder, fell to his knees, and shouted, "Don't open fire, give us a chance to leave. We will never set foot on the Eternal Night continent again in this life. All these ghost houses are yours. I only ask for me and my son to withdraw as a condition. I'll tell you the conditions for a second-level continent in this life. You definitely don't know this. Don't you want to ascend to a second-level continent? Only by ascending to a second-level continent can you truly be considered a hegemon." At first, he didn't know what was happening, but now that things had developed to this point, all the ghosts understood what would come next. At this moment, they were like prisoners on the execution platform. The butcher's knife could fall at any moment. Chen Fan stood on the city wall, watching this scene. Without speaking, only the copper pipes in the wall were rapidly flowing with large amounts of cold liquid. The heavenly Dao cannon had begun to charge. More and more ghost emperors stepped out from the ghost nests, each prison cell closer than the last, drawing nearer and nearer, until a ghost stun was only 300 meters from the defense line. Its eyes suddenly blazed with murderous light. Its body burst forth with immense speed. In the blink of an eye, it reached the defense line. He raised the hammer in his hand and brought it down heavily. With that single hammer strike, countless bricks and stones on this level 10 defense line shattered. A multitude of cracks spread across the line, smashing out a pit nearly 30 meters deep. A few more strikes, and this level 10 defense line would collapse with a thunderous roar. Behind him, the group of rolling dead who had been kneeling and begging for mercy, now suddenly flashed fierce light in their eyes. He smiled and charged swiftly toward the defense line. The Imperial clan had fought for years, and even in such a crisis, they found a sliver of hope. The Heavenly Dao Cannon needed time to charge. As long as they could break through the defense line, before the Heavenly Dao Cannon finished charging, they could turn the tide. Faced with such a crisis, the Imperial clan united truly and completely for the first time. Countless ghost emperors began to charge at the defense line without regard for their lives. Behind them, a swarm of ghost nests also started to sprint, their target aimed directly at the defense line at the breeding Yellow Spring Pass. Yet, almost in the next moment, the part of the defense line that had just been destroyed began to repair itself rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it was restored to its original state. Chen Fan stood atop the city wall. He looked coldly out over the city wall, at the ghost nests rushing toward the defense line like a flood, their numbers so vast they were almost suffocating. The Imperial clan had indeed found a last chance, but the Heavenly Dao Cannon had already finished charging. He paused for a moment before speaking softly. The next moment, the sky suddenly darkened. The 5 max-level Heavenly Dao Cannons stationed on the defense line activated instantly. 5 extremely thick, blazing pillars of light almost instantly engulfed all the ghost nests outside the city, covering it all. The blazing pillars of light completely covered the remaining continental plates. All the ghost houses along the way that were enveloped by the blazing pillars of light began to writhe in agony. Ghosts below the strength of a ghost emperor evaporated instantly. This was the Heavenly Dao Cannon. All things exterminate dogs. After a few breaths, the barrel lit up. If the gods had a name, then perhaps that name would be the Heavenly Dao Cannon. This structure, which could only be obtained after the continent was promoted to level 2, now fully displayed its terrifying dominance. This was not a war. This was erasure. Erasure of those beings that should never have existed in the eternal night continent. After a deep breath, the blazing pillars of light slowly faded. A full dozen more breaths passed before everyone's eyes readjusted to the current brightness. Then the long, narrow land, there was not a trace of ghostly residue left. Scarcely a shred of flesh or blood could be seen. It had been purified completely clean. Only a vast amount of ghost stones and drops covered the entire continent. The war was over. The next moment, nearly 1,000 airships suddenly rose into the sky, forming a single line formation above the breeding defense line, flying deep into the heart of the eternal night continent to collect the spoils of war. And among the airship fleet, hundreds of merchant-class airships began rapidly placing max-level ghost fires onto the ground, preparing for the dominion of the world. And at that moment, amidst the sounds, cheers mixed with cries of weeping finally erupted from the breeding defense line. We won. We won. We've won. We can go home. Fan Yu has won. The Eternal Night Continent has won. Gradually, the cheers resounded across the entire Eternal Night Continent, and even the new continent. No one had expected the war to end so quickly, nor did anyone know what price the Eternal Night Continent had paid for this war. Chen Fan stood on the defense line, gazing eastward. He stood there quietly, until nightfall. Eternal night once again swept across the entire Eternal Night continent. He saw one ghost fire after another being lit, steadily advancing toward the depths of the Eternal Night continent. Those ghost fires, emitting a yellow glow, were like the lights of 10,000 homes, suppressing the Eternal Night continent, telling the dead that they could come home. After an unknown amount of time, before dawn broke, the last ghost fire of the poetry collection was personally lit by Wang Mazi, the merchant guildmaster on the other side of the continent. The next moment, a total of 3,877 max-level ghost fires, as if responding to a call, simultaneously erupted with blinding golden pillars of light, reaching the sky. Nearly 4,000 ghost fires enveloped the Eternal Night continent. The entire continent instantly lit up as bright as day. Then, these towering golden pillars of light gradually converged together, shooting straight into the 9 heavens above. Wherever the light pillars passed, darkness was swiftly dispelled. The pillars' speed grew faster and faster, until people faintly heard a bang, like glass paper being shattered and torn through. The darkness that had shrouded the Eternal Night continent for countless years was instantly broken apart. A sky full of stars appeared above the Eternal Night continent for the first time. All the surviving people across the entire Eternal Night continent at that moment set down their work, standing still and looking up at this scene above their heads, until the golden pillar of light that had surged into the 9 heavens suddenly shattered. Then a golden rain fell from the high sky, blanketing the entire Eternal Night continent. Lakes once again filled with clear water. The wilderness began to sprout green grass, and the Eternal Night continent rapidly recovered. The continental plates that had sunk into the sea seemed to press a rewind button, quickly restoring themselves. One by one, exposed ghost mines rapidly took shape, and the entire continent began to revive swiftly. Chen Fan calmly gazed at the panel that emerged from the depths of his soul. Over the next 3 years, This continent will continuously absorb the energy of the swimming liquid. In the following 3 years, infertile soil, ghost layers would form. This continent will not be invaded by the ghost layer. Within 3 years, silently watching this. After an unknown time, he suddenly laughed. This war was over. Whether it was a ghost race, or the imperial clan, it was over. Within 3 years, no ghost dwelling would disturb the eternal night continent. The next moment, hundreds of fully loaded airships packed with ghost stones raced toward the continent's edge. These airships' mission was to head to the primordial lands, scout the remaining ghost tombs, and their numbers, and clear out all ghost tombs still within the primordial lands. Then, Fenyu did not bask in the joy of victory. Batch after batch of Fenyu members mounted skeleton horses and airships. He swiftly deployed his defensive line and began laying copper pipes in large quantities. Chen Fan had not forgotten. The current eternal night continent, though restarted and reclaimed, was in a state without the heavenly Dao. He had to act fast enough to let the eternal night continent gain sufficient prosperity so the heavenly Dao could be recondensed, and to pull that one back. The war was already over. Leave the rest to Fenyu. Early February, year 01 of the eternal night new calendar. 1 month had passed since the eternal night continent's restart. After that, Fenyu issued the new eternal night calendar. The territory had already been fully restored. The current eternal night continent, large crowds of people, scattered once again across the eternal night continent, busying themselves with the new era's tasks. This continent had already been unified by Fenyu's progress, achieving complete unification. It fully met all conditions for promotion to a second-tier continent. All that remained was for the heavenly Dao to condense and to report these matters upward. Then the eternal night continent could officially complete its promotion. Chuanwu Plain. Hundreds of people were rapidly building a great city on the plain. Chuanwu Plain had returned. The head of the Tang family, who once had a tense encounter with Chen Fan, now paused his busy work, wiped the sweat from his brow, looked up at this newly risen Chuanwu city, then gazed at a Chuanwu city ruin site within the city, feeling somewhat emotional. The Chuanwu city ruins had long been erased, not even a trace left. They had replicated one inside the city, a Chuanwu city ruin site, to commemorate the former Chuanwu city lord, who alone held the city to the death. People need history. History may not teach people lessons, but it can let them know the sacrifices of their predecessors, and thus cherish the present life more. Tang Yu did not speak, only stood quietly by his father's side, calmly offering a cup of tea. Once, he had been very greedy. He used to enjoy traveling around, but ever since the ghost nest invaded the eternal night continent, everyone left their homes and fled to the western wasteland island. Countless people died defending the eternal night continent. He became less greedy, and not as cheerful as before. It was as if he had grown up. Whether this growth is good or bad, no one knows. Former Eternal Night Continent, Western Region, Black Tortoise Defense Line No. 7. An empty clearing. 2 bronze statues, dozens of meters tall, stood there. One was a bay-chested old man. His body was scorched red by flames, roaring in fury. The other was a young man, his face expressionless, swinging his sword repeatedly. This place is the western part of the Eternal Night Continent, the tomb of all defenders of Black Tortoise Defense Line No. 7. Also the tomb of Qiu Yisi and Tanyi. And the moment this giant bronze sculpture was completed, in a place unseen by anyone, a line of small characters slowly appeared above the sculpture. Remember the ancestors. Pass in the history. Prosperity will come quickly in 1,000 years. These words quickly dissipated into the world. These words quickly dissipated between heaven and earth, and without a trace. Meanwhile, nearby, a city was rapidly rising from the ground. Countless people were busy within it. Giant ghost beasts were constantly carrying and stacking giant bricks to build the city. This scene was happening in countless corners of the Eternal Night Continent. Jiangbei Plain. Shenfan, standing atop a pillar that reached the sky behind Nameless Mountain. He looked down at Jiangbei. A month had passed since the war ended. He could clearly feel the prosperity level was steadily increasing, and on the Eternal Night Lord panel deep in his soul, he saw a new section. Eternal Night Continent. Prosperity, 1,807,600. Prosperity needed to condense the heavenly Dao, 3 million. Now Jiangbei was vastly different from before. Without a doubt, this place would become the absolute center of prosperity for the Eternal Night Continent in the future. And the other side of the land, in the boundless darkness of the primordial land, hundreds of African units were sweeping through, clearing out the remaining ghost huts inside the primordial land and the barren ground below. A ghost hut, barely half a meter tall and clearly underage, ran in panic, eyes full of fear, shouting loudly, "My name is Nai Kaingxi. My name is Nai Kaingxi. My father is Nartan. He's a high-ranking member of the Ghost Clan. Don't kill me. Don't kill me." Behind him, an African unit was rapidly approaching. In the reincarnation tower panel, a line clearly appeared. A middle-aged man in a uniform stood on the deck, Looking at this scene before him, his eyes showed no mercy. He said coldly, "Stop shouting. It doesn't matter what your father's name is." The next moment, boom, mounted, and the African unit was a divine cannon. It fired a crimson shell. Without mercy, it sent him on his final journey. But on this thin, terrified ghost, a white light shield suddenly appeared, blocking the attack. Then a ghost hut phantom emerged. From the information left by the phantom, it was learned that this ghost named Narchan had once made a deal with a heavenly Dao. The heavenly Dao then cast a beam of light onto his son. The light beam would erase his memory and put him into a 3-day coma. When he woke, he would only remember his name, Xianxia. Then the ghost hut left one final message: follow the markings all the way. There is a rift in the resting place. Through this rift, you can reach a vast, endless sea. At that sea, there was once a black abyss. It was stolen before the final assault. Throw him into the rift. From then on, life and death are up to fate. In his pocket, there is a jade slip. The jade slip records, from wartime, all humans who leaked information to the Ghost Clan. It might be useful to you. This agreement is a gentleman's agreement and made with that one, not one made with Fan Yu. But considering that Fan Yu rose because of this agreement, I hope you can spare Yu's life. Then, this thin, terrified ghost lay unconscious on the ground. A crimson line slowly appeared on the ground, stretching into the darkness, guiding the way. Standing on the deck, the middle-aged man in the uniform frowned deeply. Dare not take responsibility. Immediately picked up the sound transmission talisman to contact superiors and the swift boat. Because the mansion relayed the superior's answer, the prison master commands, follow the guidance to the execution grounds of the primordial land, and mark this ghost dwelling, then bring it back to the breeding grounds. No object shall be bred. Chen Fan of Nameless Mountain was staring at the prosperity value steadily increasing on the panel. Just then, Beast Prosperity plus 50, art. Chen Fan suddenly spotted a notification window deep in Nameless Mountain. He saw a prompt. A new exotic beast has been born, and birth in one exotic beast adds 50 prosperity. That's quite a bit of prosperity. Deep in Nameless Mountain, Chen Fan arrived here. A dedicated area had been marked out deep in Nameless Mountain to house the exotic beasts that fled during the Great Evacuation. Quite a number of them. Across the entire Eternal Night continent, all the exotic beasts that could reach the western desolate island had come, all taken into the breeding grounds. The Beast Pavilion is managed by YY. YY is the pavilion master of the Beast Pavilion. But it must be said, some exotic beasts are indeed formidable. YY can't defeat them, but YY's parent strength is even more impressive. With these two guardians by his side, these exotic beasts were all subdued thoroughly. Chen Fan stood on a tree not far from an exotic beast nursery. Looking down, he saw YY, full of excitement and anticipation, lying on the ground outside the door, waiting. Beside him was placed a pink toy specially prepared for his little sister. Yes, YY's parents had another child. But the next little crocodile is a sister. That's good. Chen Fan was pleased by this, chuckled lightly without interfering much. Instead, he came quietly, and left just as quietly. The Eternal Night continent was able to restart breeding, and began a grand infrastructure project. Chen Fan, along with countless others, worked from dawn till dusk, busy and bustling, building their home. And so, the grand infrastructure lasted over 2 months. One day, the sun shone brightly. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed from the sky. Everyone instinctively froze in place and looked up. The next moment, they saw countless tangible spiritual energies of heaven and earth begin to gather above the entire Eternal Night continent, spinning faster and faster. More and more spiritual energy, until a voice, like a great bell, resounded. All the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the sky formed 4 massive characters. The Eternal Night continent, no matter where in the Eternal Night continent, where and what position one stood. Looking up, they could all see these 4 characters blotting out the sky. Chen Fan, standing on the heaven-piercing pillar at the back mountain of Nameless Mountain, overlooked the entire Janbei. He looked at the Eternal Night Lord panel deep in his soul. The golden panel was flashing continuously. Eternal Night Continent prosperity has exceeded 3 million. Eternal Night Continent Heavenly Dao is condensing. The next moment, the 4 massive characters covering the sky above Eternal Night Continent slowly dissipated. The entire sky returned to its previous state, seemingly without any change, but he faintly felt as if he had been accepted by this realm. It feels much better now. The gentleman, Chen Fan, stood on the heaven-piercing pillar and subconsciously whispered. His voice was very low, but he believed that if that gentleman had returned, he would surely hear it. The first call had no echo. The gentleman, he called out again. Still no response, until he was about to call a 3rd time. A small amount of spiritual energy quickly condensed before him, forming the figure of a middle-aged man. As usual, but different this time, that gentleman's eyes were filled with indifference, devoid of any emotion. His voice was utterly cold as he spoke word by word. I am the Heavenly Dao of Eternal Night Continent. Are you the master of this territory's breeding grounds? Only the appearance was similar, but whether in speech or in the emotions revealed in his pupils, it was completely different from before. Chen Fan let out a light sigh, turned and worked toward the edge of the heaven-piecing pillar, preparing to take the hanging basket down to the base of the pillar. He muttered to himself, looking down, "It seems that gentleman didn't return. I'll just do this for big evil and little evil. I wonder what sky-devouring evil tastes like. It should be quite good, I imagine." As soon as the words fell, K, the one behind me whose face was tense just now, his expression instantly collapsed. It's me. Was I just joking with you? By the way, how did you figure it out?" Chen Fan turned around and shot a glare at that gentleman. "Didn't you say it yourself? The heavenly Dao simply wouldn't contact mainland forces. Since when does a normal heavenly Dao act like you?" The middle-aged man let out a chuckle. Deep within his eyes, as he looked at Chen Fan, a trace of gratitude surfaced. He lowered his head, counting on his fingers in calculation, then lightly touched his forehead. The perspective rapidly pulled upward, until the entire Eternal Night continent was within his sight. Then, somewhat dazed, he murmured, "Alan, I never thought I could return to Janbei again." In less than 3 months of nurturing, the prosperity of Eternal Night continent has been able to coalesce. Producing a heavenly Dao is utterly beyond belief. Stop sighing for now, let's get to work. Get to work, Tar. Chen Fan let out another long sigh, then patted that gentleman on the shoulder. "Old man, have you been away from being the heavenly Dao for too long? You've even forgotten your basic duties. Eternal Night continent has already met all the conditions for promotion to a second-tier continent. It just needs you, old man, to report upward." Right. The middle-aged man slapped his head. "Wait for me. I'll go handle it right away." With that said, he instantly dissipated and vanished back into the heavens and earth. Chen Fan stood alone atop the peak of the heaven-piecing pillar, gazing up at the clear, boundless sky above. He mused that having a heavenly Dao he could communicate with like this wasn't so bad. It seems convenient for everything, and I can even give it a nudge. Just then, high above, in the cloudless sky, a thunderous roar suddenly echoed, shaking the heavens. All the mountain ranges of Eternal Night continent let out a low, resonant dragon's roar at the same moment. Rivers rippled without any wind, and the leaves in the forests began to tremble gently. Then, across the vast expanse of the sky, countless billions of extremely fine, nitrogen golden threads descended from the heights. In the next moment, those countless billions of fine threads slowly assembled into three-dimensional characters, Eternal Night continent approved for ascension. Then this line of text quickly dissipated, transforming into specks of light that scattered, merging into the mountains, rivers, and earth. The moment those large characters fell, it was like a final hammer striking the anvil. Eternal Night continent trembled slightly. 1 instant sticks time later, a gentle rain of light sprinkled across Eternal Night continent. This great rain did not extend anyone's lifespan, but as it fell on their bodies, it carried no chill at all. It felt incredibly warm. Chen Fan stood alone atop the peak of the heaven-piecing pillar, looking down over Janbei. He paused for a long time, then suddenly burst into laughter. Deep within his soul, the Eternal Night continent slowly revealed a panel. Eternal Night continent has been promoted to a second-tier continent. He had been traversing this world for several years now, and today, he finally had something to show for it. Just then, he vaguely sensed that the heaven-piecing pillar beneath his feet had also undergone a change. The surface of the heaven-piecing pillar now displayed a complete map. Gray areas were beyond the shooting range, while green areas were within the shooting range. With just a tap of his finger, the heaven-piecing pillar would bombard that region. This is the usage authority granted to the heaven-piecing pillar by a second-tier continent. And in the large panel, the heaven-piecing pillar's maximum level, the level 10 cap had also been lifted. Soon, Chen Fan waved his hand grandly, and after consuming 3 million ghost stones, he raised this heaven-piecing pillar to level 20. The panel popped up before him. Heaven-piecing pillar raised to level 20 already at maximum level. Cannot be upgraded further. Obtained level 20 maximum effect. Across the ocean, when the heaven-piecing pillar's target is not Eternal Night continent, damage is doubled. Nurtured the first level 20 heaven-piecing pillar. He then raised the defensive wall to level 15 in one breath. City wall upgrade to level 16. Requires 50,000 ghost stones, plus a handful of soil from another continent. Chen Fan let out a long breath. It seems some building upgrades will have to be put on hold for now. But what I need to do next is to develop the continent as much as possible during this 3-year protection period for Eternal Night continent, and I can once again set out on a journey of exploration, striving to find another continent like ours, one that also belongs to the human faction, to see how other continents are developing. Time passed slowly. Before I knew it, 6 months had passed since the war ended. On this day, all members of the Commerce Guild began evacuating the new continent. Their mission was complete. They would return to their original duties, exploring the new continent. After the farewell banquet, held for all Commerce Guild members, Chen Fan returned alone to the breeding side. There were still many matters requiring his attention. For instance, the breeding faction had recently built many private schools. After the war ended, A building blueprint that had been catalogued was now maxed out. Structure name: Private School Building Grade, Blue Building Level 20 Effect: Within the private school, forts become sharper, memory improves. Max level effect level 10, enter the Hall of Mastery. Upon reaching level 20, it can merge with the Fortune Pavilion. Max level effect level 20, disciples flourish. If one is immortal, when first activating their cultivator identity, based on preschool education, 3 cultivated types matching their talent will appear, and they can freely choose. Heavenly Dao Blessing Effect. Chosen 1. Each year, the top scholar in the grand exam receives a special reward. The most important of these is a hidden Heavenly Dao blessing triggered by building private schools. The first grade continent blessing. Disciples fill the world. After achieving unification, build 10,000 private schools. Just then, Wang Kui approached from behind and reported, Jade Lord, according to your plan, we have now built 9,982 private schools. It is expected that by tomorrow, the remaining 18 private schools will be successfully completed. Good, Chen Fan nodded lightly. A flicker of insight appeared in his eyes. He had always felt that this world was somewhat unfair. At the age of 16, everyone could awaken as a cultivated through a ghost stone. What kind of cultivated one awakened as was entirely random. If one awakened as an architect, they were above others. If one awakened no special cultivated type, they were completely ordinary. Now, with private schools, one could choose among 3 cultivated types. Now, large numbers of 14 and 15-year-old children, as well as adults, were studying in the private schools. The former represented the future, the latter the present. The private schools were extremely important to him. Then, Chen Fan stood at the edge of the heaven-piercing pillar, gazing quietly down at the returning procession below. 6 months had passed since the war ended. In the next 2.5 years, the eternal night continent would not be eroded by ghost dwellings, and there would be no danger. But he needed to make ample preparations. During these 2.5 years, for a large number of ghost dwellings still lurked in the Thunder Rain Sea. No one knew when would the Thunder Rain Sea suddenly dissipate. The ghost creatures in that sea were far more formidable than the royal clan. Even a level 10 defense line could not hold them back. And from what that Mr. Zion had told him, there were 5 hidden heavenly Dao blessings for a first-grade continent. After the Eternal Night continent was promoted to a second-grade continent, he had completed 2 great unifications. Stars align and these 2 hidden heavenly Dao blessings. The reward for great unification was a purple-grade treasure, the breeding jade seal. Treasure grade, purple effect 1. Righteous dragon's roar shakes the 9 heavens. Righteousness rises against traitors. Effect 2, the seal of truth, everyone can see the mark. Effect 3, city alliance, if there is betrayal, the traitor's veins will show cracks, burning with pain day and night. Effect 4, time freeze in moments of crisis, strike the seal. Within 3 zhang, time slows drastically, while the seal holder moves as usual. Effect 5, body protection, the seal protects the breeding faction as long as it endures. The seal holder is immortal. Effect 6, the virtuous jade seal's legacy, once a year, the seal leaves a faint mark. Every 81 marks, additional wondrous uses appear. Chen Fan stood on the heaven-piercing pillar, looking down at the breeding jade seal in his hand. The so-called righteous dragon's roar meant that when he, bearing the seal, spoke, his words would sound to breeding members and eternal night continent citizens, like a dragon's roar shaking the 9 heavens. Perfect for speeches. Even if he said something like eggs can be used for egg fried rice, breeding members would still feel their blood boil. Seeing the truth is Zyder's order, as long as it's stamped, then all breeding members, through their identity tokens, can judge the authenticity of the seal, ensuring that when he issues some important orders, the city governs its subordinates. Any breeding member who reveals the wuxia revelation, once it becomes a dream, a mark will appear on the palm, and during the burning pain day and night. The 4th and 5th are both life-saving effects, several times stronger than his emerald bracelet. The 6th is the inheritance of breeding. Each year of development adds another faint mark. Every 81 years, an additional special effect is gained. Phew, Chen Fan took a deep breath. The heavenly Dao of the continent is hiding its blessings. It is a reward, given when this continent reaches a certain stage of development, a reward bestowed. And what he needs to do next is to guard this bottleneck as best he can. Just then, the boat talisman in Wang Kui's arms beside him suddenly grew slightly warm. Prison Lord, the men below have found the Changqian tomb. Chen Fan's eyes lit up slightly and laughed. Let's go take a look. The Changqian tomb is a necessary material for upgrading vehicles to level 10 in offense and defense. In front of a warehouse, Chen Fan looked at the Changqian tomb in his hand. Now, some ordinary geniuses, earthly treasures and exotic treasures are all being appraised by the appraisers below. Although the speed is much slower, but with so many items, he alone certainly couldn't appraise them all. This Changqian tomb was appraised by those below. It was identified through appraisal. Prison Lord, an old man with white hair and a long beard stood before the warehouse, explained tremblingly, this Changqian tomb originates from your order a few months ago. A few months ago, You ordered the new continent to activate the Azure Dragon Cannon, bombarding the Ghost Tomb and the Thunder Rain Sea, to try and see if it could blast it to death. Now we have the answer, it cannot. But a piece of transmission plate fragment was accidentally swept into the Thunder Rain Sea. Struck by heavenly thunder, it formed this Tankin tomb. Chen Fan looked down at the Tankin tomb's panel and his hand, lost in thought. He said nothing. Item name: Tankin tomb, exotic treasure grade, blue exotic treasure effect, struck by 10,000 years of heavenly thunder, yet the wood did not shatter. Chen Fan nodded. Leaving the warehouse and the other side, 95 looked at the distant sea surface, at the illusory Chuan Wu charging toward him again, let out a sigh, stepped into the air and flew out toward the sea island, preparing to lower this illusory Chuan Wu deep into the ocean once more. Half a year ago, when he saw this old acquaintance again on the sea surface, he was a bit flustered. He had already forgotten what he felt at that moment. Hadn't he already died and come back to life? Why the hell could this Chuan Wu still follow him? Forget it, same as before, one morning run every day, unshakable as thunder, just think of it as exercise. In the vast ocean, Wang Mezi, standing on the African deck, stared solemnly into the depths of the sea. No one knows what lies in the deep sea, but that is precisely the meaning of their merchant guild's existence, to explore this realm, to explore this world. North of the Eternal Night continent, Chen Fan looked at the vehicle before him, already upgraded to level 10. In offense and defense, it gained the ability to forge vehicles. Vehicle offense and defense upgraded to level 10. New feature, can forge vehicles. Absolute Descent Puppet, can perform excavation work underground. Forging requires 1,000 ghost stones. Chen Fang quickly consumed 1,000 ghost stones, forged an Absolute Descent Puppet, and with a single command, the puppet began to whir. Crouching down, it shoveled toward the ground, soon dug a small pit, and buried itself. Not bad. A glint of light flashed in Chen Fan's eyes. The digging speed wasn't particularly fast, but the advantage was mass production. This meant large-scale excavation of underground tunnels. No need for YY to personally handle everything. Just forge a batch of absolute descent puppets and be done. Chen Fan chuckled. Vehicle attack and defense upgraded to level 11. Besides 10,000 ghost coins, it also requires one heavenly diving tomb. Time to upgrade for now. We'll have to see when the Thunder Rain Sea area can produce another heavenly diving tomb. Additionally, he obtained the level 10 max effect, vehicle attack and defense level 10 max effect. Bustling traffic, unlocks the yellow tier building blueprint, road. Vehicles traveling on the road, receive double speed boost, and have a certain deterrent effect on ghost houses. No blueprint needed. And the Eternal Night Lord's panel, a buildable road structure appeared directly. Building 1 meter, costs only 1 ghost stone and 1 copper pipe. Unfortunately, Chen Fan felt a slight regret. This effect couldn't be applied to the high-speed rail. The high-speed rail didn't count as a vehicle. It was essentially just a hanging basket. Still, the road's construction cost was extremely cheap, so he could lay it out across the Eternal Night continent, enhancing communication and circulation between regions. After finishing all this, Chen Fan then headed toward Nameless Mountain again. There were many buildings to upgrade. He was very busy. For example, the signal towers. All signal towers bred so far were level 1. First, because the upgrade conditions were too harsh, upgrading from level 1 to level 2 required consuming sea moss, mountain embryo, or any one of these three, plus 2,000 ghost stones. Now he had enough materials. He upgraded all signal towers to level 20 in one go. Signal tower upgraded to level 20. No optional direction for this upgrade. Amplification of sound transmission talismans. Communication range reaches 1 million kilometers. Level 20 max effect. Endless echo. Up to 3 keywords can be set. Within the communication range, all transmissions using sound transmission talismans that mention these keywords can be intercepted. Graduation. Complete graduation. 1 million kilometers squeezed enough to fit nearly 100 Eternal Night continents. Such a vast communication range would be more than sufficient for a long time. But this newly acquired level 20 max effect was very interesting. After thinking for a while, he began inputting first level continent, second level continent, Eternal Night continent. With a 1 million kilometer communication range, there would surely be other continents and races. These 3 keywords could help him gather more external information. Soon, and the Eternal Night Lord panel deep in his soul, and on the copper mirror surface of the signal tower, messages began flashing rapidly. These messages were all transmissions within the communication range that mentioned the keywords via sound transmission talismans. Chen Fang quickly reviewed them. There was no news about the Eternal Night continent. Looking, the outside world probably didn't know that the Eternal Night continent had advanced to a second-level continent, or they simply didn't care. Chen Fan thought for a while. He replaced the keyword Eternal Night continent with Black Abyss, then took out a sound transmission talisman to contact Xiao Qiu, telling him to send someone from the Dark Pavilion. Their daily job would be to review all intercepted intelligence, then report it. After Xiao Qiu compiled it, it would be presented to him. Black abyss referred to a mysterious existence that only appeared on the sea, a place where dense black kai gathered. The ghost clan could summon it on a large scale, and the human clan could also use it here. This way, they could quickly obtain many ghost stones. It was a strategic location every faction would fight over, equivalent to a super premium version of a ghost den, if possible, although he wouldn't clash with other continents anytime soon. After all, he felt he might not be able to win. The Eternal Night continent was still too weak, but if there was a chance, he might be able to pick up some scraps or something. Half a year had passed since the Great War. The Janbei defense line, Chen Fan stood on the city wall, gazing at the seaside in the distance. There were many building blueprints only unlockable by second-level continents that he still hadn't obtained. For example, the Profound Sky Propeller only had its permission unlocked. It required ghost houses that died and the Eternal Night continent, or ghosts killed by people of the Eternal Night continent, to have a chance of dropping. In recent days, there hadn't been a single ghost on the Eternal Night continent. Naturally, one cannot obtain it. No more ghostly beings gather in the nearby seas. The entire world has grown much quieter. That gentleman, he turned his head to look at the gentleman standing to the side. How is the fusion of the primal continent fragments progressing? He hadn't forgotten the need to merge the primal continent fragments. That is, the former dwelling place of the ghost clan. Merging the primal land is entirely the work of the heavenly Dao. Fan Yu has already planted ghost flames all over that primal continent fragment, completely occupied it, thoroughly seized control. It means, Fan Yu has fully occupied this continent. Only then can the heavenly Dao begin the fusion. When the ghost flames were planted across the primal continent fragment, no golden words descended from the heavens, nor was there a 3-year protection period, and there was nothing. It was as if nothing had happened. Soon, that gentleman clicked his tongue. It should be about half a year more, roughly. After all, merging a fragment of a primal continent is quite a laborious task. What specific benefits are there? Chen Fan asked again. That's hard to say. That gentleman shook his head. In the short term, there certainly won't be any benefits. The primal continent fragment will be completely broken apart and merged into the Eternal Night continent. The land area won't increase either. I don't know the specifics, but I can tell you what I know about the primal continent. It was a continent that existed before the darkness invaded the world. The only continent in the entire world. It is also the only continent in the world. In other words, this continent represents the orthodoxy of this realm. Any continent that merges a fragment of the primal continent will gain that orthodoxy. You won't need this for now, but when you do need it in the future, you'll understand how valuable those 3 words are. You'll also note why so many continents go madly to war, just to snatch a fragment of the primal continent. Chen Fan said nothing more. He just shrugged. Leaning on his emerald staff, he worked aimlessly along the city wall. The wind blew, carrying the sea breeze. Feng Yu is developing in all aspects now, but the most crucial heavenly Dao cannons and defenses have yet to be upgraded. The resources required are simply too vast. Right now, Feng Yu simply lacks the capital for continent-level bombardment. Unknowingly, 30 days passed. 7 months had gone by since the great battle ended. Feng Yu continued to develop steadily, and on a desolate island, over 10,000 kilometers away from the new continent, and the 1,234,554,321 beach, number 95 was stretching his muscles, preparing for the morning run of a new day. As usual, in about half an hour, his old companion would catch up and bite him. His old friend is about to catch up and bite him, but just then, Ghost 195 suddenly froze in place. He seemed to vaguely see a flying boat appearing at the edge of the sky. That flying boat looked extremely blurry, completely indistinct, but the flag planted on that flying boat was so clear to see, the black and white flag of Fan Dan Zaifan. In that instant, he felt as if his heart had stopped beating. An intense fear instantly filled his entire vision. No way, he didn't even know where he was now.